it's weird because there is this sort of gaping hole in all of the press around the psychedelic renaissance. And it just seems like nobody wants to call it out, which is that everybody championing the studies at Johns Hopkins and Imperial College and the beautiful end-of-life studies and the smoking cessation and the benefits of microdosing, no one's doing that shit. They're all just partying their faces off. And they're using that stuff as legitimization of their own desires to just go chase states. And there's going to be a reckoning on that because the benefits of the MAPS studies on PTSD with MDMA and those kind of things, that there's this very much a diminishing curve that when you take things out of 1 to 3 sessions of deliberate, structured exposure, oftentimes for novice users, they haven't been like ravers for 20 years and then they go into one of those studies, although there's a few of those which allow people who are sort of psychedelically savvy to participate. But in general, it's, I've got a life-threatening illness. That's why I'm in the study. Or I've suffered outsized amounts of trauma. That's why I'm in the study. And so those amazing upticks in transformational experience, I think are part due to the novelty of initial exposures, the structure and the therapeutic context, and the integration that is enforced, and built into those protocols. Take away all those things, and you have people who are going back for their 30th or 50th or 100th dip in the well, and we're getting a massively diminishing return on that stuff. And it's like, it's like weed versus meditation.
Right. So it kind of begs the question of short-termism hacking versus long-termism putting the work in.
Yeah.
So it's so many people are obsessed in this current environment and trying to hack everything rather than being like, okay, 20, 30 years worth of meditation, here I come. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's no skipping steps. So whatever we it's a little bit like, that I think I read something that there was a new hotel at base camp on the Nepali side of Everest. And they were even pumping oxygen into it because they were helicoptering, and their primary draw were Japanese tourists, and I'm presuming also probably some of the newly minted Chinese, upper middle class, that kind of stuff. And it's a great metaphor because you can fly people in a helicopter up to elevations, and they can get the selfie, and they can say, "Look, I was there. I did this amazing adventurous thing." But the reality is if the helicopter breaks, they don't know an ice axe from their fucking hole in the wall. Their body isn't acclimated to those terrains. They need artificial supplementation to even survive there. And they become a hazard and a liability to themselves and everybody else that would need to get them down the mountain, right, if they had to do so on their own steam. Versus, we got to take the youngest group of Americans ever up to Camp 3 on the north side. And had them, because we spent a month traversing and traveling that terrain, a month, snow and ice school, like practicing, and got them up to 23,000 feet and back safely. That's a different thing. Same basic skill sets, but progression, learning, training, acclimatization. And that's missing in the psychedelic space. And then you hear, and it's this fucked up intersection of easy and wide access, psychedelic tourism, the research and Renaissance, which is sort of validating these things, and then even the sort of social media, life coach workshop, the idea that I can be on the doorstep of the mystery, barely have poked my head through, and then turn around and offer, a workshop or a retreat or whatever it is.
Life coach.
Yeah. The 23-year-old life coach, the 30-year-old, tantra priestess, who has a string of broken relationships and has never had a child.
Yeah, we were kind of saying, the workshop phenomenon. There's just no regulation to it, so you can just, as long as you've got some type of social media savvy skills. Yeah. And you can put something together in Photoshop, then you've got a workshop.
Exactly. And you think about what would the counterfactual be. It's like you can't just go to REI and buy yourself a puffy North Face goose down parka and a sturdy pair of hiking boots and say, I am now your Himalayan mountain guide. And nor can you go and buy a boogie board and say, I'm a Hawaiian waterman. Come and follow me. But in the psychedelic sort of spiritual personal growth, sexuality spaces, anybody and their fucking mother can hang out a shingle. And if you can con enough people through your webinar, you're in. And there's a degree of self-appointed mastery. I mean, the number of people that I've heard describe their long, deep, dedicated study to plant medicines that began, with a 2011 Nat Geo article on ayahuasca. I remember reading that article. I remember going, oh shit, this stuff finally fucking going mainstream. And for people to say that was their first glimpse or exposure, and they're now considering themselves Western shamans, is ludicrous.